So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we are studying then the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of Yahweh, giving us then the understanding of the time of the end. So then, evaluating these scripture, we can come to the conclusion, first, the Hebrew as we know of as writings, they do not come from the Hebraic lineage but from the Aramaic, and then the Hebrews later they adopted the Aramaic writing because it was easier to write. And then the second, there is a situation going on while the people were wandering in the desert for 40 years because of their disobedience. Then we find in Deuteronomy or Devarim many areas explaining this adventure of theirs while they were wandering around in the desert, where there is a section of the Torah explaining then the people, they wore sandals and they were never worn out. Unfortunately, it was a big lie. We have to understand what went on during the time of the desert, as people can verify by themselves. If they go to the land of Israel, in a desert over there you'll find many pieces or stones or pieces of stones around the desert, where then the people during the time of their wanderings they carved or they used chisels and they chisel around the stones, the shoes, or then the picture of sandals. So then if you go over there and you find it, then when you make a relation with Devarim or Deuteronomy, then people were wandering around and they were making then signs on those rocks. So what Yahweh was saying then via the prophets simply regarding this factor is related with those sandals carved on those rocks. It would give then the understanding of those sandals never were worn out. There is no relation with the people walking around in the desert and then their leather sandals never were worn out. It's not true. Yahweh is not so naive and ridiculous as being involved with his people, even to the point of changing the physical condition of parts or then clothing that doesn't worn out. Of course it got worn out. There were people over there that were using skins of animals because their clothing did worn out, obviously. So then this area of the scripture or the Torah, the name is literary activity, where you find then many years later, because then we have to understand then after they came out of the desert, only a couple of people came out of the situation, and we have to understand also the literary activity regarding it. If only a couple of people came out of the desert, how would they be then in a relationship? So we have to establish the understanding of only a couple of worthy people were able to lead the rest out of the desert because they believed what Yahweh said. So then you begin to understand what it means in the spirit when we read the Holy Scripture. So first, then the people, they were wandering around in the desert, and a lot of them died, most of them did, and their shoes have nothing to do with the spiritual understanding of the period. Yahweh then, while he was with them coming out of Egypt, they were involved with his presence as a person would understand as being clothed with his presence, and his presence never wears away. While they were underway on the desert, coming out of Egypt, then they felt the presence of Yahweh around them and never wears away. later, much later then, when the scriptures then were recorded, then people, many generations later, began then to record. First was from mouth to mouth, and then later became recorded. As we can understand, the recordings started when Moshe established the first holy service. So then please stay tuned, much more coming up.